Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about attitudinal barriers about people with disabilities. This is Roberta.
I'm Roberta, this is Sherri, and we are from Bridge Builders of Diversity. And we want to talk to you today about attitudinal barriers, which some of them you may not be aware that you have or ascribe to.
Yeah, it's all about including people with disabilities in the diversity conversation, which they always seem to be left out of.
True that.
Yes.
So some of the attitudinal barriers that I see as a teacher. I am a special education teacher, have been for a long time, and some of the ones that I see that were listed on this resource from abilityindiana.org, thank you for your resource, really spoke to me. One of them is, they say backlash, and they define it as the belief that people with disabilities are given an unfair advantage, such as easier work, or behavioral standards are loosened for them, which brings me to the words equity and equality. Equality means that everyone gets the same thing. Equity means that people get what they need to succeed. So if you see a child who only has 5 math problems on their page, it's not unfair. It's because they can only do 5 math problems to demonstrate their learning. I hear it a lot. I hear it from my fellow teachers. I hear it from parents. Things that they feel that it's unfair that kids with disabilities are receiving a smaller homework assignment, or maybe they get to do their work on a computer, or they get to take more breaks in school. It's because that's what they need to succeed. It's equity versus equality.
Right, and I have a son with Down syndrome, and it's important that he's given work that he can handle and that he can succeed with, instead of just giving him this huge assignment that he's not going to be able to finish on time, like a typical student. And that's important for his self-esteem and to be able to succeed in his work and to better himself and to learn.
So that's a great segue, Sherri. You're so good at these. There's another barrier that's an attitudinal barrier for people with disabilities, and that's that they're wholly innocent. And I really like that term. They're people, they shouldn't be held accountable. They shouldn't be forced to work hard. You should lower the bar of expectation for them. And I know I sound like I'm contradicting myself, but when you do that for people with disabilities, you're denying them the pride and accomplishment. So meet a person with disabilities where they are, but don't be afraid to challenge them a little bit. To say, hey, I know that you can do this, but I bet you can do it a little bit better. And that will give them that intrinsic pride and those feelings that we all thrive on, a pride and accomplishment and pride of a job well done.
Yes, and as a parent, I would totally agree with that. I'm always pushing my son for him to reach his fullest potential, and it's important to push those boundaries, not in an unreasonable expectation, but I've even asked this teacher, I think this works a little bit too easy for him. Can you give him a little bit more of a challenge? And she's either told me yay or nay, depending on the circumstances. Like when we were transitioning to online learning, I thought the work was way too easy, but she wanted to give them a step back to get adjusted to the computer work, since they were switching from in-class to online, so that they could get adjusted with the work to be able to succeed. And now
that's really wise, so they weren't facing 2 challenges at the same time. They were doing work that she knew that they could do. And that's what I mean when I say meeting people where they are. If you know that they can do single digit addition, throw in a couple double digits there just to mix it up. Don't be afraid to shake people with disabilities up. They appreciate the stimulus, and you're helping them to actualize their full potential.
And actually, several students in my son's class have made honor roll, and this is through the pandemic and being transitioned from in-person to online. They are back in person now, but several of them, she's a phenomenal teacher, but they were able to, some of them are making the honor roll. Because they're actually using the computer more, and they're doing Google Classroom and everything else. And They actually didn't have Chromebooks like some of their more typical developing peers at the school. And then with the pandemic, they got the Chromebooks, and they're excelling
Right.
with that adjustment.
Absolutely, absolutely. They're meeting the challenge, and they're feeling a pride in their accomplishments, and that's what everybody wants, including people with disabilities. Another attitudinal barriers for people with disabilities is the idea that they're a burden of charity, and I like that term because I hear it a lot. I teach in a fully integrated classroom, and then sometimes I'll hear from parents of typical students, are you going to be able to work with my child, because I know that there are children with significant needs in your classroom? And the answer to that question is yes, of course. I'm going to be able to work with your child. They will not be forgotten or pushed aside, or there will be no impact to the delivery of services and education for kids who are typically developing, even though it is considered a special education program.
And it is so important to have typical developing peers with their special needs peers for learning. They learn so much from each other, not just classroom work, how to be kind, how to be thoughtful. My oldest son is such a wonderful human being. He's kind, empathetic, and I think he has a drive inside of him because he has a brother who can't do things naturally like he can, and I think he appreciates that he can learn, and he has his physical body to a higher level than his brother, and it gives him such compassion having a brother like that, and it's so important to expose children at a young age to people who are different from themselves, children with disabilities, children of color, all people, it's
right,
very
and
important.
especially socially. A lot of times the typically developing students will again raise that bar for the students with disabilities, that social bar, like this is socially acceptable, these are our social norms and mores, and now you rise up to meet that challenge. Temple Grandin is a wonderful speaker, and she's a woman with autism who advocates for students with autism. And something she said at one of her speaking engagements was, having autism is no reason to put a fork in your hair at the table. I absolutely love that. Sometimes people will excuse a student with disabilities back to that wholly innocent. They'll say, oh, well, it's their disability, they can't help it. That a disability is no reason to hold them to social conventions. One of the first things that Annie Sullivan taught Helen Keller was to sit at the table and eat, so that she could be involved in the social aspect of eating. It's difficult, and it takes a lot of time and patience, but it's so worth it. And you're allowing a person with disabilities to feel that pride and achievement.
Right, and it also teaches typical children to not be afraid of people with disabilities. So the more exposure that you can have your kids with all kinds of people with any type of person, the less fear they're going to have towards other people, because they'll have more of an understanding and acceptance of people who are different.
Absolutely, which brings me to... So good at these segues, girl. Which brings me to the last bullet point that stuck out to me from abilityindiana.org, and is that the people with disabilities are a menace or an object of pity, and you never know. There's a fear of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, or things I've heard of people setting them off, that they're going to become enraged or become dangerous when the wrong thing is said. And in some cases that might be true, but not always. And there's no wrong hello. There's no wrong, hey, come sit with me. Or there's no wrong way to say, hey, do you want to play a game?
Like my son has very typical emotions. His brother picks on him. He gets mad. He tries to swat him like typical brothers. And his expressions are appropriate for what his brother does to him, and vice versa. But some people are afraid to engage with somebody with disabilities because they're afraid of those responses. But I mean, my son normally reacts, or normal, to his brother's teasing and stuff like that, and he'll even be like, "Ma, he hit me," you know.
Right.
And the older one's like, "Ma, he hit me."
Right, exactly. He was breathing my air.
Yeah.
So yes, people with disabilities do face the same sibling challenges. Indeed,
Yes.
that typically developing people do, and they have the same gamut of emotions, and they have the same desire to feel pride in their accomplishments.
Absolutely. So if you like our content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And Roberta and I will be putting out more educational videos or awareness videos on disabilities.
Absolutely. We'll see you in the cyberverse.
Bye, guys.